my New York Knicks made a splash. It made a little splash, depending on how you describe a splash. But they made a trade. This happened just hours before we recorded this podcast. Cam Reddish, the former first-round pick for the Atlanta Hawks, is being sent to the New York Knicks along with Solomon Hill and a 2025 second-round pick in exchange for Kevin Knox, a former New York Knicks first-round pick, a protected 2022 first-round pick, which is going to be from Charlotte, and we'll talk about some of the protections on that in a minute, will be going to Atlanta. So Cam Reddish now teams up with R.J. Barrett once again, former Duke teammate. We can talk a lot about just what Cam Reddish means for the New York Knicks, but when you think about Barrett and Reddish teaming up, the last time we saw these two pair up together, there was a third man, Kendall. Just like in the NWO when we kept saying, who's the third man? There was a third man that found his way into Durham, North Carolina, onto the campus of Duke University. That third man ended up changing life for Duke that season, Zion Williamson. So there's a lot of ways we can go with this move, but just on the surface, what do you make of the trade?
Yeah, my first question is, what's it going to take for the Knicks to get Trey Jones?
You're the second person I've seen make the joke that it's confirmed that Trey Jones to the Knicks is just inevitable.
It's in the works. I know Knicks need a point guard, so Trey Jones, be on the lookout. But in terms of this move for the Knicks, I mean, look, you know me, I've loved Cam Reddish as a prospect since he came out of Duke. I had him pretty much neck and neck, if not higher than R.J. Barrett coming out of Duke. So, and that hasn't been entirely correct so far in his early NBA career. But
despite Hooper Media keep trying to convince us otherwise, that somehow Cam Reddish is better, even though there's no metric to suggest that.
Yeah, there's no number. There's no number to suggest that. And that's the thing about this, is that obviously you have to take this with, I don't want to say a grain of salt, but you just have to understand that, the upside of Cam Reddish right now isn't exactly the player that Cam Reddish is right now. And so expectations have to be tempered to a degree where we're not saying, the Knicks just got Paul George.
Guarantee future All-Star, which is what
right,
I saw
exactly.
one blue check basketball person say on Twitter today.
Exactly. We don't need the Knicks just got, Paul George. They just got Jason Tatum. But is there an outcome where he becomes that good? I mean, it's possible. And if you're the Knicks, why not take a swing on a guy who, at worst, is a guy who's injury prone, but when he's out there has moments where he can take over games. He's kind of an enigma, but when he can have games where he's the best player on the floor. And at best, like I said, he's a guy who has the potential to be a future All-Star. He has the talent. He was just never healthy and never really given an opportunity on a team where everything is ran through Trae Young. It just was not the best fit for Cam Reddish as a player to play on a team where the volume of touches and the usage is going all to one player who's at the point guard position. So, yeah, I mean, why not take the swing for the Knicks? See what you got. You didn't give up. I mean, you gave up Kevin Knox, who was like a worse version of Cam Reddish in terms of that.
Who's out of rotation, who really was having a tough time.
Yeah, exactly.
On the floor for New York.
Yeah, it wasn't somebody that you were really, worried about his future anyway. He's even more of an enigma and even less talented than Cam Reddish is. So obviously given a protected first round pick, we have to remember that Cam Reddish was a top 10 pick.
Yeah, he was the 10th pick in the draft. Right.
He was the 10th pick in the draft. I don't look at that pick and say it was a bad pick at this point in his career. You still kind of don't really know. So if you're at that point where you don't really know about a guy who's the 10th pick in the draft, and you really, really don't know, not like, Jarrett Culver, we don't know. Like, we kind of know Jarrett Culver is not going to be a superstar. I was wrong on that one. But with Cam Reddish, we honestly don't know. It's still up in the air for a guy even 3 years into his career. So if you're going to make that deal, I'd rather have that guy than, if we're looking in this year's draft, some dude that you can draft 20th, that would have ended up being.
And you gotta hope that you actually get that 20th pick.
Exactly.
because it's the pick to get into the things of the pick, the details of the pick. It's a top 18 protected pick from Charlotte. Charlotte right now is at 20. Right, really, you hit the nail right on the head with that. They're 20th right now, and they're having a really good season. So even if they slide a little bit, the Knicks don't get the pick. It goes down to the next year. I forget the exact protections on it, but it continues to go down and down. It may be top 10 next year or top 15. But
is it
at
an
a certain
eventual first round pick, or does it ever turn into second?
It turns into second round picks by 2025, I believe. So that's a fact. I know that for sure. So it may not ever be a first round pick in theory. And and when the Knicks made the trade last year, when they traded out at 19, I was one of the people who were on this podcast that were saying I didn't really understand that trade, though I ended up kind of liking the value that they got from the players that they got. But to me, I was like, they're getting this pick that is that may not ever be a first round pick. I didn't even quite understand.
Remember, that
the
was
logic
Kai
to this.
Jones trade. At the time,
that was Kai Jones.
You know, why wouldn't you just take Kai Jones? And then it would end up being Keon Johnson, right? Who they also traded.
Right, yeah, Keon Johnson, they traded out of there. So Tommy Beer, shout out to Tommy Beer. He does great work for Forbes. And he does a lot of work covering the Knicks. He broke it down quite nicely. He said the Knicks entered the 2021 draft with the 19th, 21st, and 32nd picks. They managed to turn those 3 picks into Cam Reddish, Quentin Grimes, Roku Jokubaitis, who if you pay attention to any European basketball, is one of the best young players in Europe right now. Point guard, left-handed, Lithuania. He looks like he's going to be an NBA player, a really good NBA player potentially, whenever he comes over. And Deuce McBride. So, considering what they had in that draft, if you told me a year later that was going to be the outcome, I mean, there's not a single basketball person, forget Knicks fan, a single basketball person that wouldn't have looked at that and said, that's a pretty good job.
Yeah, I'll take that.
You know what I'm saying? You'll take that any day of the week. So that's a really, really nice job by Leon Rose and this front office. Another analysis I saw that I think is interesting too is Leon Rose has done an excellent job of not allowing the trade market to dictate value for players. And what I mean by that is, remember last year he traded for Derrick Rose around this same time. It might be almost to the day. It was very soon. Remember last season the NBA started later in the year. They traded for Derrick Rose earlier in the season, well before the trade deadline. Here they trade for Cam Reddish well before the trade deadline. And what happens when you do that is you don't get into this kind of bidding war leading up until the trade deadline with other teams that may be trying to outbid you. Clearly, they don't. The Hawks, for some reason, well, we know the reasons, but they were ready to move on from Cam Reddish. They just felt like it was not going to work out for him there with them. And we knew that they were shopping him around, but I guess the Knicks being aggressive enough to say, look, we'll give you a protected first was enough to say, all right, well, we'll take this deal now. Instead of maybe waiting the 3-4 weeks where you get closer to the deadline, where other teams start to say, okay, well, wait, we're willing to maybe do a little bit more because maybe they see some things on their team that they want to change. Maybe they see some things, maybe some teams want to start tanking, and maybe they feel, okay, we want to take a young player like Cam Reddish. We'll take on one of your bad contracts like Gallinari. The word was that they wanted to pair Reddish with a bad contract. So the Knicks never got into that place, just like they never got into that place with Derrick Rose. Last year they traded Derrick Rose for a second-round pick and Dennis Smith. So, again, really solid job by this front office by attacking early, well before the trade deadline, and getting a piece that can help the Knicks. Because the Knicks have problems in terms of size on the wing. You know, their backup 3-man has essentially been Alec Burks for most of the season when he's been on the bench. But now he's starting at the 1, which is controversial in itself. But now they don't really have a backup 3. So, they are missing that kind of size on the wing. And Cam Reddish is 6'8".
And a guy who Tom Thibodeau is going to love his ability to defend on top of, what he can give you offensively when his shot is falling.
And Cam's got to be consistent, because some of the complaints from Hawks fans has been, the defense slips when he's not getting touches.
The motor, obviously doesn't.
The motor has always been a question with him. But when he plays defense, this guy can be a really good defensive player. One of the guys where you put on the other team's best player, and you may have a shot at keeping that guy's night to a reasonable night. That's the kind of defense Cam Reddish is capable of playing.
You're talking about,
and it's not what you were ever going to get from Kevin Knox.
Yeah, Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about an Eastern Conference where Chicago's got a guy like DeMar DeRozan, Brooklyn's got Kevin Durant, Boston's got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Um, obviously Chris Middleton in Milwaukee. I mean, you got some really great wings. That you're gonna need guys who can guard those guys to a degree. Obviously, none of those guys are really gonna get shut down, but
Mm-hmm.
although we know R.J. Barrett can already shut down Jason Tatum, right? But
He's one for three this year, I guess, in those matchups, or 2 for 3. I mean, they played 4 times. The first game of the year, he did a bang up job, and Tatum had his way the rest of the 3 games.
right. Um, so I mean, I think this is a very it's a fascinating move, and what I will say is this shows you the value also of having those extra expendable assets.
Exactly.
We talk about why do we want a future protected first? Why do we want a contract that's tradable? Or some extra cap space or this and that. It's for when guys like Cam Reddish are, banging down Travis Schlenk's office saying, "Get me out of here,"
Exactly.
because I want to go to a team that's going to give me an opportunity to thrive. And so the Hawks are pushed to the brink where they've got to trade him, and now you can get him for what you view an expendable asset. There are Lakers fans right now that want to wring Rob Pelinka's neck because he didn't make a move for Cam Reddish, but the Lakers don't have any first round picks to trade.
Right, exactly.
They don't really have any assets. I mean, if you're trading for Cam Reddish, you're trading Horton Tucker. At that point, you're not really. It's not really. It doesn't make sense to trade a young player for a young player.
Yeah.
So
a young player that you're using. Again, the Knicks traded a young player that was not playing for them, that they had deemed was not
right.
was not going to be a factor in their season.
And I'll say this about the Hawks.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sleep on the idea that Kevin Knox can't play well in Atlanta.
Definitely, I totally agree with that.
It wasn't going to work out for the Knicks. If Kevin Knox turns out to be a starting NBA small forward, we can't then look at it and say the Knicks were stupid. It wasn't going to work out.
Yeah.
Obviously hindsight wins every trade. So,
of course, yeah.
But with that being said, I think Kevin Knox is a player. I don't love this trade for the Hawks, but this is also a deal where it's feasible that Kevin Knox turns out to be a guy who can play.
It's a trade you had to do. You never love trades that you have to do, but the Hawks had to trade Cam Reddish. Now the argument comes: is it the best they could have got? Again, we don't know what's going on in the locker room or how much he's being a malcontent, or his camp being a malcontent with the front office, and how toxic the situation may have become. We don't know any of those things. But the fact that they traded him this early shows that they had to get rid of him very soon. So they got rid of him, and I agree. Kevin Knox fits much better next to Trae Young and those guys than Cam Reddish does, because Kevin Knox, we've seen that whenever he's asked to do much more than what his offensive game is right now, that's where he struggles. There was this idea that maybe he could be kind of a isolation scorer, a guy who can run pick and roll as a ball handler. We saw, Dave Fizdale use him like that in a great deal his rookie year. And we saw that was not really his game, or at least he wasn't developed enough to that. And what we've seen in the little bit of spots we've seen him play the last 2 seasons is, I mean, he's a very good jump shooter. I mean, he's really become a pretty consistent knockdown catch and shooter in the very limited time he's played. Now, defense is an issue, rebounding is an issue, but when you're playing, with a guy at Trae Young who's great at finding shooters, Knox is going to get those opportunities and get great looks, better looks than he got with the Knicks, probably playing with the Hawks. So there's definitely a chance that he could work out for them for the rest of the season and end up being a decent player for them. Cam Reddish, there's an argument to be made that he should have maybe embraced the catch and shoot role more, because he's actually really great at it. It's one of the things he does, very well, above average according to league metrics. And the isolation stuff that he has the capabilities to do are a lot more kind of erratic. Sometimes there are great events, like great moments, like a couple weeks ago when he had 33 points, and there are some nights where it's very, it's kind of all over the place. It's kind of out of control. So, but Knox, you don't have to worry about that. He's not going to be trying to do any of that stuff. He's a catch and shoot guy. So, him playing with Trae Young in their offense, he probably fits okay.
Yeah, I'm excited about the fit. I'm also excited that NBA trade season has started.
Begun. Yeah.
And this isn't a move where I look at the Knicks and say this is a panic move or this is
Not at
they're
all.
blowing it up. This is a team that clearly I think is trying to make themselves better. Um, it's interesting. I mean, Cam Reddish along with RJ Barrett are both going to be up for extensions this
Extensions. Yeah.
offseason. And
And
then
Woj was kind of couching this trade
as an ability,
as an
for Cam Reddish
yeah
to get an
to get an
extension.
extension, which was as a Knicks fan, I was a little alarmed by that. I'm not gonna lie, because let's be honest, I'm not gonna just say everything was, and I'm like extension already. We haven't even seen you get on the court.
Yeah, and
You
Woj
know,
doesn't say that stuff unless he knows that.
he knows that this is what the Knicks are thinking.
Yeah,
So when you get to that point where you talk about, okay, we're already talking about extension for Cam Reddish, RJ has had a really good stretch. He's had back-to-back 30-point games. We know his number is going to be a pretty sizable number when he gets his extension. It goes back to the original part of this conversation, which is I think where we have to wrap it is the third man on the way. Is Zion. And there's some people that are going on social media saying, "Oh, here we go, Knicks fans going crazy and saying things that are just." But what I don't understand about that is there's some there are times where there are obvious dots to connect, and then you try to just connect those dots, and then people go on this thing about how Knicks fans are all delusional and crazy. But I mean, they have two of his college teammates on the roster. They traded for one of them. I mean, we know that Zion Williamson wanted to be a New York Knick during the draft lottery, during his draft year. He's talked about Madison Square Garden being his favorite place to play in the NBA. An absurd statement to state for somebody who plays for another team. It's just a logical step to make. Is this where the Knicks are looking at? Is this the move that they're looking to make potentially for Zion Williamson? One of the questions I posed is, and I guess I'll ask it to you, is if somehow Zion was available this year, this trade deadline, and the Knicks right now, I think they're in 11th. They're that 7 to 10 to 11 spot right now in the Eastern Conference is all mumble and jumbled with a bunch of teams that are at 500 or around 500. Do you make a trade for Zion Williamson at the trade deadline, knowing that he either might not be able to play at all, or if he plays, he's going to be trying to just get into shape because he hasn't played all season? Do you make that trade and blow up any chance of making the playoffs? That's what you would do if you made that trade mid-season. Or do you wait until the offseason to try to make an offer?
Yeah,
do we both agree that that's definitely going to be an offer that's going to be made? Like, that, to me, looks kind of obvious.
I don't think that, I'll be honest, right now, as things stand, I don't think the Knicks have what it takes to get Zion.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
Unless he does, like, a crazy force. I'm done. I'm retiring from the game unless, I'm playing in New York. Which, I mean, we've seen crazier things, but, like Ben Simmons. But with that being said, I would do that if it came to that. If it felt like, the Pelicans were willing to play ball at this point and like got so untenable in fact by a month from now. I don't think it's gonna happen, but if that were to happen, I would trade for him, punt this season. Your draft pick's gonna be great. And going into next year, you're in now. You may not have your draft pick, so that also may be part of the reason why the Pelicans would want to maybe do it. But I mean, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Interesting.
Now, again, what does that even mean? I mean, you're trading Randall. Do the Pelicans want Randall back? It would have to be probably a 3-4 team kind of deal, and then then, do the Knicks have the pieces outside of Barrett? Barrett would be
Barrett would be untouchable in this conversation.
He would be part of
the whole point would be to team up, the NWO.
Yeah, exactly.
College basketball's NWO.
Right, and that's why Barrett not being included. I mean, I would say Toppin might be their best prospect overall.
Toppin and quickly are gone
automatically.
Any kind of trade. There's not even a conversation. So then it becomes, okay, you got to add a star. So I guess Randall
will go someplace.
He goes somewhere. There's an issue with money because Zion's still on his rookie deal. Randall just signed a pretty. Well, I guess he's still technically on this year's contract, so I guess you don't have to match the $18 million he's making this year. So it's not as hard in terms of finding the money.
And
to work.
I mean, all you got to do is take back another bad contract.
But you got to take back a bad contract with their team, and I mean, shout out to our brother Henry, the Pelicans fan. I don't know their salary cap situation well enough to know what their bad contracts are.
It
You know,
wasn't.
Ingram signed a big extension, but he's not a bad contract, I would say.
Yeah.
And you're not getting Ingram and Williamson.
No,
of
no, no.
course.
It was Steven Adams. Now they
Right, they got rid of Steven Adams.
Valanciunas. But he's actually a pretty good player.
Right, another good player. I think the Knicks.
If we're talking
totally
about a
fine taking
3-team deal, you can find somebody that
somebody will take Randall. Right.
You know, could you trade for Westbrook? You know, like now that's a lot of money, but just in theory, like somebody, Kevin Love or somebody that's floating on a team, and where that team said, yeah, we'll take Julius Randle back, in return,
right? Just to get off this contract. Yeah,
if you knew you were getting Zion,
that makes sense. You know, that's a good
I do think
armchair GMing there, Kendall.
Yeah, I do think that this is where this could end. I don't think, if I were to guess, I would say that anything like that would happen. The wheels would really start to turn in the offseason, and then
that's my guess.
Next season could look like Damian Lillard this year, where it's like, when are they going to trade Zion? He's going to be a free agent. If Zion doesn't sign the rookie extension, that because he's going to be up for it along with Barrett and Reddish. If he doesn't sign it and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to go into restricted free agency, that's going to be a real message sent. Now, the Pelicans aren't worried about restricted free agency, but they are worried about him saying, I'm not signing the qualifying.
Right. That's where it gets dicey.
Which
is
I will sign
that's
the qualifying.
That's the power. Yeah, that's a power move that KP made on the Knicks. That made them say, okay,
I'll go 1 year, play as an unrestricted free agent for cheap, and then be a Knick in 2 years. I mean, man.
Yeah, that's the move that would scare most teams. Very few players have actually gone through it. No one's ever called a bluff, to be fair.
I don't think anybody that was offered a max deal has ever said, "No, I'd rather take the qualifying offer."
No, that doesn't. I mean, because it's a insane play.
Yes,
on its face value, you're talking about passing up $150 million to play on a $9 million deal essentially for 1 year, or depending on where you're drafted. I guess Zion might be a little more, but $12, $13 million for 1 year, and hopefully, with his health especially, hopefully you don't get hurt. Now you can actually make
he's in the unique position where financially he's probably doing pretty well anyway, just based off endorsements. Yeah. So it's not $150, $200 million probably, but he's probably making more from Nike than he is from the Pelicans anyway. So yeah, I mean, yeah. I think that is where this could end up going, but it also could end up going in a situation where if it's not Zion and you have guys like Barrett and Reddish and the other guys,
that's another nice
a nice package you could use to get a Damian Lillard
or
someone else that may become available. So, but even if this isn't some grand scheme that they're putting together, from a value standpoint, you have to make that deal if you're trying to go big game hunting.
Yeah, Cam Reddish as an asset is much better than Kevin Knox and whatever the Hornets pick is going to be. Like, you don't know what it is. So, like, that alone, if you can go to the team and say, hey, I have Cam Reddish here, and we pair him with Toppin, or pair him with a Quickly, or pair him with all the guys, if you really want to get a big superstar. And he comes to New York and plays well, then now you're cooking with gas there. So, I think we both agree that this was a pretty strong move and a very good gamble, low-risk gamble by the New York Knicks.